But first, this week saw a first for organ donations as the Welsh Assembly voted for Wales to become the first place in the UK where consent will be presumed unless you opt out. But the number of people who donate their organs to complete strangers while they're still alive is on the up. Well, they're called altruistic donors, and one of them joins us now. Bob Wiggins and Lisa Burnap is a lead nurse in living donations. Welcome to you both. Bob, if I come to you first, the question that most people will be asking, and I asked first of all, is why? Why would you decide to do that, and also to donate to somebody that you've never met and you don't know at all?
Yeah, it's hard to say exactly why. It was something that I knew that people gave living donations to families and friends, and I guess it just occurred to me that I wonder whether you could do it to a stranger. And so 4 years ago, and I just, out of interest, looked up on the internet, and that interest turned into, well, it was idle curiosity to begin with, became an interest, and then it became more of a compulsion. I was walking around with something I didn't need, that someone else, it could change their life. So over a number of years, that feeling grew in me to the point where I finally picked up the phone and said, I'd like to do that.
And you didn't worry about your own safety, because it's not without risk?
I'm quite pragmatic. No, it's not without risk, but everything we do every day is not without risk. And the risks aren't the serious risks are not large. And when you look at them in relation to other things that we do, they're really quite minimal, in my opinion anyway. So no, it wasn't. Once I understood that, it wasn't an issue.
Lisa, what are the risks? What should people be aware of before deciding to donate?
Well, it's absolutely prime importance that donors are safe. And that's our main focus. So what people have to be aware of is that you can die from this operation. And like any other operation, it's major surgery, so there are complications associated with it. But that has to be balanced against the fact that we now have developed a lot of expertise doing this, and that it's a safe operation in safe hands. So I think it's really about everybody assessing, as Bob did, for them, what the risk is, and for us explaining that as clearly as we possibly can so that everybody goes into this completely with their eyes open. But our focus is first on the donor. Is the donor going to be safe? Is it sensible for them to donate? Is this a sensible thing for them to do? And then we move on from that point of view.
But as you say, the ultimate risk is you could potentially lose your life. It's not without risk. So Bob, then how did you persuade your family that this was a good idea, a good thing for you to do, but especially as it wasn't a family member?
I know, yes. Well, I did leave it to the last minute, to be fair.
You didn't tell them?
I thought it'd be easier that way. I told my wife once I started doing the hospital tests. So I'd already been into it for I'd already been looking at it for several years.
Oh my goodness. What did she say?
Well, the first conversation was a little bit tense. But as we went through the process, and she learned to understand what the risks were too, and what was a natural concern for a loved one. I mean, it's one thing, I think you'd be concerned about a loved one going to hospital for an operation that they needed,
Absolutely.
let alone one that they didn't. So, but over time, I think the understanding was there that it was something that I felt I needed to do, and that actually the risks, you know, I came down around the M25 today. I mean, that to me is almost more risky. It probably isn't statistically, but for me, you know. So, no, my wife was very supportive of what I did in the end. But at the start, yeah, there were a few tense conversations.
So we know that we know that potentially it's quite difficult to persuade family members this is something that you need to do. But Lisa, you're seeing a rise in the number of living donations. Why do you think that is?
Well, historically, I mean, over the first 10 years of this millennium, really, we saw a huge increase in the number of living donations between family and friends. And I think that established a really safe and a lot of confidence in the programme. And remember, we're performing more than 1,000 living donations a year. And in addition to that, we now have almost 200 people like Bob who have just come forward spontaneously and said they'd like to donate to somebody who's waiting for an organ. And we're enormously grateful because that's a huge contribution to the programme, and it's one that we value enormously.
But people have to be aware of what's required. They would have to take a considerable period off work, apart from the health risks. There is a period of time that you would need to be out of your employment.
It's absolutely, as I've said previously, it's absolutely paramount and knows exactly what they're going into, what's involved for them and what it means for their lives, because everybody has a different has a different life, and so for some people this isn't something that they will feel that they can do. But for those who can, and even if people step forward and have that conversation, they can, you know, they're not committed at that stage. At any stage, they can withdraw at any stage along the process. So it's really important to have those conversations in a lot of detail and very openly with people.
And Bob, you're just approaching that 3-month mark, which is quite crucial in post-op recovery. How are you feeling?
I'm fine. I think that 3 months is sort of the period that, in my mind anyways, was the period that I set aside for full recovery. But I was out of hospital in 2 days. I was up and doing things within a few more days, and I was back working part-time within a couple of weeks. And it just progressively has got better. And I've been at sort of 95% for the last month or so anyway. So it was a very quick recovery. Unfortunately, my job was flexible, so I could take that.
And no adverse effects at all?
None whatsoever. I can forget that I ever gave a kidney now, and just go on with life as I did before. Except now I'm a little bit more passionate about spreading the word.
So, needless question, but I presume you'd do it all over again?
Yes, I would. Yeah, and I'd encourage people to consider it. It's not for everybody, but to consider it.
You're a very generous human being. Thank you very much for joining us, Bob Wiggins and Lisa Burnett. Thank you. Thank you.